So the fall protection system, as with many of these standards, I don't think it's a surprise that some of these things are coming out right now, and this is one that certainly didn't surprise anyone up here. The significant changes are right now that all workers are covered, and all workers must be in 100% fall protection. And that's the most significant change there. As you can see here, the note here also says that you can use work positioning equipment for fall protection, so long as the worker cannot fall more than 2 feet. So that's a very limited application, obviously. OSHA has put a couple exceptions in here, which is not unusual for some of their standards, that if the employer can demonstrate that fall protection is infeasible or creates a greater hazard, that is an exception there. And it's up to the employer to make that determination there. Also, OSHA allows for not using fall protection when you're on a congested pole, but only in the area that it's congested. In other words, if you're coming up through a bunch of secondary or communication conductors or guy wires, once you get beyond that, you are back in fall protection mode at that point. Okay. One of the other things that is a significant change is the testing of the harness. Harnesses or lanyards must pass a drop test after being exposed to a 40 cal test. So if it's been exposed, it needs to be tested before it can be used again. Thank you. The rule clarifies now that unless a snap hook is a locking type and designed specifically for the following connections, snap hooks or work position may not be engaged. This is nothing new. This was in subpart B. It basically says that all snap hooks need to be locking type. The areas where they discuss here is the directly connecting to webbing, rope, or wire rope to each other, to a D-ring to which another snap hook or other connector is attached, to a horizontal lifeline, or to objects that are incompatibly shaped or dimensions in relationship to the snap hook.
Okay. There's also another thing on here that we didn't get on the PowerPoint. They have pulled fall protection from such things as transformers and capacitors and that, and referred us back to subpart D for fall protection on that. And they've pretty much insinuated that subpart D says you're going to have a railing. Now, we know how practical that is in a substation environment. But it also goes in and talks about other engineered types of fall protection. So we're not stuck with the railing, but it specifically pulls out the transformers and capacitors, stuff like that we've got to get on. It pulls that out of this section and puts it back into the subpart D. So, any questions? Okay.
So when it comes to fall protection, it says to a D-ring to which another snap hook or other connector is attached. So in other words, if you only have a 2 D-ring body belt, you need to have a 4 D-ring body belt after this goes into play. Am I correct?
You want me to do that?
You go on that one.
Okay, well, I'll weigh in on that one right now. Okay, that's the way that I personally read the standard and have read it for some time, because it's not a change. If you go back to the fall protection standards outside of 269, it says that anyway. It's not changed. They've just inserted this language in 269 as well. But there is dissension among us as board members to whether they read it to be 4 D-rings, on a belt instead of 2. Michael, do you want to kind of give your interpretation there?
Yeah, no, it's just the way I read it, because they're talking about a snap hook in the locking type, and that's what the new harnesses, the new work positioning belts and that, they all have the snap hooks. They're all locking type. In fact, anything that is out there now that isn't supposedly is supposed to have been taken out of service. So the way I read that, it says unless it's specific, snap hook is a locking type and designed specifically for the following connections, which to a D-ring, which to me says that you can put 2 in the same D-ring. So we're asking for an opinion, and that's going to be hopefully gotten to us here in the next month or so to see what they have to say at OSHA. So, But I know I see a couple of heads nodding back and forth. There's, differences of opinion, so we're going to try to get it straightened out.
More questions?
The IEEE 1307 fall protection for utility workers, the national consensus standard. Is there any indication as to how OSHA is going to view that and whether that's thrown out the window entirely, or?
You want me to comment on that, or are you going to?
I think it's.
Well, in talking to some of the committee members on the IEEE committee, I am told here in just the last 10 days that they're going to be revisiting that and that they'll come to consensus with the proposed standard of OSHA. Michael, behind you there. You got.
All this fall protection that we're addressing right now is to do with pole-type structures. And I hadn't yet read in there where, we have towers with ladders, cages built around them. Has that been addressed in there?
Yeah, this would apply to towers also. I mean, we think of it as, the buck squeeze and those other similar devices on wood poles, but it's not specific just for distribution here.
Well, I guess more specifically with the tower with the ladder that has a cage built around it, which originally was considered a fall protection for that ladder, but now with these new standards, has that not changed?
Well, I've read stuff in there about step bolts and different things in there, but the way I understand it, my interpretation is we're still talking 100% fall protection. However, whatever that looks like.
Well, that's considered a fixed ladder, what you're talking about. And I can agree with what you're saying there, and I think there'll be more to come on that too. And of course, I just have my opinion, but I believe they'll finally accept the fixed ladder if it's caged and leveled with resting places.
Okay, one more question.
Yeah, with the 100% compliance coming January 1st, is there any sense that the manufacturers, suppliers are geared up for this?
You could probably ask them over the next
Yeah,
couple
you can ask them starting tomorrow.
I guarantee you,
They're happy.
They're thinking about it right now.
Yeah, they're all happy about it.
All right. We'll move on to the next subject.